Netflix is the Weenie Hut Juniors of anime.
Weenie Hut Juniors?
Oh, no, sorry. I was actually pointing to the place next to it.
Netflix?
They don't understand anime, plain and simple. They've been trying to get into the market for about 5 years now, and while they've developed a robust catalog of shows, they really don't understand the community or how to distribute anime, and have repeatedly screwed up so many times it's hard to see why anyone would continue to watch anime on there, let alone support Netflix. I just want to say that by making this video on Netflix, in no way does that mean every other streaming service is perfect. Crunchyroll might get anime a little more than Netflix, but the service has had a terrible player for years, is constantly plagued with outages, and has been mired in controversies surrounding things such as High Guardian Spice and their routinely awful anime awards. Every single streaming service has inherent problems, something I address at the end of the video. I just chose to focus specifically on Netflix because on top of their inherent issues, they've made a considerable amount of poor decisions over the years related to anime on their platform. My first section of this video will focus on anime on Netflix. Following that, I'll move my scope to more broad complaints about Netflix, and then towards the inherent issues plaguing streaming services in general. So if you want to skip ahead or to a specific section, I have timestamps in the comments. This largely seems like a problem with North American Netflix, but the platform routinely delays its releases to account for an English dub. I know that many people enjoy English dubs, but delaying an already finished, subtitled product in order to tack on an English dub track is absolutely incomprehensible. You're doing absolutely nothing but encouraging people to turn towards alternative methods to watch a show when you're holding the episodes hostage to finish an English release. This is especially bad because of Netflix's insistence on releasing shows to account for binge culture. Even when a show's episodes are completed and dubbed, they will hold off until the entire show is complete in order to release it. In an industry where Funimation has made simul-dubbing commonplace, and when a great many people prefer subtitled anime anyways, this sort of practice is indefensible. I think there is an argument to be had that releasing something all-in-one boosts viewership in a general sense, but I find that unbelievably hard to believe in the anime scene. Anime is usually spread through word of mouth. An even bigger example would be the release of Dragon Ball Super's final episodes. The hype for these week-to-week releases was so massive Crunchyroll crashed for hours just about every single time they tried to release a new episode. It's hard to believe either of these shows would have been nearly as successful with Netflix's poor distribution methods. Of course, shows can succeed when released binge style. It would be ignorant to dismiss it outright. I think anime, having been released week by week for as long as it's been around, has the weekly episode hype so ingrained in its culture, releasing episodes like this does nothing but hurt them. This is especially harmful as shows are generally released in binge format by the time the next season is beginning, hurting the overall interest in the show as newer ones take the forefront. Just like their Netflix original TV shows, Netflix also holds the rights to and produces some of the newer currently airing anime on their service, such as Little Witch Academia. This might seem normal enough, but what it really means is that anime they don't deem successful enough are condemned to purgatory of being unrenewed. You might think Little Witch was a success, right? It's a fan favorite and one of Studio Trigger's hallmarks at the moment. Well, Netflix doesn't think so. You'll have to take my word for it, but during an Anime Expo 2019 panel, Studio Trigger staff said they really wanted to continue making seasons of Little Witch Academia, but Netflix is blocking them from doing so. So, one of Trigger's most important shows, beloved by fans around the world, has been taken by Netflix, and fans will get no animated Little Witch until Netflix decides its specific business model will profit off of new content. God only knows how many other studios want to make follow-ups for shows but cannot because of Netflix.
Lamp oil, rope, bombs? You want it? Sorry.
Netflix doesn't release physical versions of their anime. A lack of physical releases means a major revenue stream for anime producers is lost, and it makes shows much more difficult to succeed. In addition, being exclusive to a streaming service means that only that service's specific audience can view the show, thus making it incredibly difficult for the show to gain traction. This difficulty to gain traction is compounded upon by Netflix's reluctance to release shows physically, making it difficult for shows to gain a more broad audience and popularity. This argument applies for merchandise as well. Without things such as t-shirts and the like to spread awareness for shows and provide additional income for studios, anime successes are much more rare. I was absolutely dumbfounded to see that, following the Kyoto Animation arson, I couldn't buy any merchandise for shows licensed by Netflix such as Violet Evergarden. No Blu-rays, no t-shirts, nothing. Of course, there's plenty of merchandise for shows licensed by other distributors, so this is just a Netflix problem. There are exceptions though, with the Little Witch Academia games being one. Unfortunately, these are exceptions rather than the norm, and the vast majority of Netflix licensed anime go without merchandise and the like, much to the detriment to the creators in various franchises. There are some shows that eventually get physical releases, but these come out years after the original streaming agreement. By the time these releases occur, the show's peak in popularity is long gone, and they're done by different companies, such as Funimation finally getting the rights to physically distribute Violet Evergarden almost 3 years after its Netflix streaming debut. I don't need to explain why openings are important. There's entire channels dedicated to breaking down how unbelievably important they are to shows. Netflix's skip intro button and auto-skipping the ending are so bad I can't even find a place to begin. Imagine missing this, or this, or this. Fucking unbelievable.
Asuka's a lot more than that to me. How much do I like Asuka? Well... Hi! Welcome to Asuka Land. It's happy here. Peace. Well, it didn't take me long after I started playing the role of Asuka to start collecting Asuka merchandise, and boy is there a lot of it.
That was Tiffany Grant, the English voice of Asuka from the original Evangelion dub. She's probably one of the biggest Evangelion otaku out there, and in many fans' eyes, she's the voice of Asuka. In a move that defies all logic, Netflix decided to completely get rid of the original beloved dub of Eva. Tiffany Grant was never consulted for the project, nor asked to voice Asuka. She wasn't even given the opportunity to try out for the role. The issues with Netflix's Evangelion release extend beyond completely disrespecting the original voice cast too. The issues are so widespread in fact that you could probably make an entire video about all the massive screw-ups. I'll spare you the details and cover some of the big ones though. Removing one of the most beloved anime endings of all time, one with over 4 million views on YouTube? Check. Oh wait, that's a meme about the ending, whoops. One with over 8 million views on YouTube? Check. Censoring and outright changing the entire meaning of the show's original dialogue, completely altering two characters' incredibly important relationship? A groundbreaking LGBT one at that? Check. In many people's eyes, utilize an inferior, poor voice cast to dub the show, completely failing in comparison to a dub from some 20 years ago? Check. Release a dub that completely removes iconic lines like "I'm so fucked up" and "congratulations."
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congrats, bro.
Check. Release completely inadequate foreign language dubs in locations like Germany and Italy? Check. Is there anything Netflix didn't screw up with this release? I honestly don't think so. There's more issues I haven't even listed, and these sorts of problems likely extend to every single anime released by Netflix. I know quality of voice acting can be incredibly subjective. That being said, general consensus among fans is that Evangelion's Netflix dub was inferior to the old one. Are all dubs as bad as Evangelion? Probably not, but if Netflix can screw up the dubbing process for one of the most important anime of all time, God only knows how poor the dubs are for other series. I wouldn't know though, as I don't support Netflix or watch dubs. My complaints don't stop there though. As I've mentioned before, Netflix delaying the release to account for dubs is absolutely ridiculous. What we can measure slightly more objectively than that are Netflix's various screw-ups when it comes to translating stuff. English subtitles are generally terrible on Netflix. You can find countless posts cataloging the various problems with one of the most integral aspects to watching anime: subtitles. From translating Titan in Attack on Titan to Giant when the show initially released, to changing Kaoru's lines in Evangelion, to having Violet Evergarden be translated by somebody with absolutely zero experience in translating fiction, leading to huge errors, and more. So even after you're done waiting months for Netflix to release their shitty English dub and opt to watch subtitled instead, you're still getting a poor experience.
totally rocked!
When Netflix isn't funding masterpieces such as Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex 2045, they're taking credit for shows other companies have made and dubbing them Netflix originals. Never mind the fact that shows such as Violet Evergarden, Carol and Tuesday, and countless others weren't funded by Netflix and aired on television prior to streaming on Netflix, they're Netflix originals. I think this branding plants a dangerous seed in the casual viewer's mind, giving them the impression that Netflix alone is behind this wide bevy of shows. Let's look at something like Violet Evergarden. Again, yes I know. Can you spot where they label this as a Kyoto Animation show anywhere? Well, I can spot a Netflix logo in the eye catch, and when they start up the episode they not only have the gall to play the Netflix logo, but a Netflix original clip too. Wait, I found it! There's the Kyoto Animation name. Oh wait, it's in Japanese. Surely there's a Kyoani logo at the end, right? Surely they got some credit for the show. Nope, another Netflix logo and a crawl for their awful fucking dubbing. Don't you know, Violet Evergarden wasn't made by the incredibly talented, passionate staff at Kyoto Animation, many of whom died in a horrific arson attack. Not them. Violet Evergarden is a Netflix original. Well, Netflix might be claiming Kyoto Animation shows as their own, but at the very least they donated to the studio following their tragedy, right? Nope. I, as a college student barely scraping by, gave more money to Kyoani in the wake of the tragedy than Netflix did.
Buzz, look at
Anime.
where?
During an interview with Tokyo Keizai, translated for us by Anime News Network, various anime insiders shared their thoughts on Netflix, and it's interesting to look at the various problems with the service. A bit of backstory. A potential problem with the majority of streaming platforms is that licenses to stream are generally bought outright, meaning a flat amount of cash is given in exchange for unlimited streaming of said show, which is not a good thing for anime creators. If an anime is a hit, it's a win for Netflix, but if it's a loss, it's our win. This quote is almost self-explanatory, but he's essentially stating that anime producers won't see a single penny beyond the initial agreement, even if the show is a smashing success. You could also say it motivates studios to create mediocre shows to simply fulfill their contract, rather than produce massive successes. The problems don't end there though. Netflix purchasing the rights also makes other forms of media and merchandise incredibly difficult to sell the rights for. With anime, an industry absolutely dominated by merchandise and mixed media revenue sources, this is a disastrous consequence of Netflix. According to anime industry reports, merchandising makes up a big part of the industry's revenue. This is something that Netflix just cuts off entirely in foreign markets. If we're generous and say foreign revenue sources play out the exact same way as Japan, that means a Netflix endgame with no merchandise or physical distributions would cut off some 15% of revenue for the industry. Plus, with Netflix not releasing things such as DVDs and Blu-rays, this limits revenue streams for anime producers and also makes viewership for these shows even smaller. The end result is an incredibly limited audience, making successes even more difficult. As the producer puts it, it would have been incredibly difficult for Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba to become a huge hit that it was if it was only distributed through streaming. This sentiment extends to Western anime companies too. In response to Netflix taking the rights of Evangelion in order to just stream it, the founder of Funimation, Gen Fukunaga, had this to say: Netflix successes are a loss for the anime community. Had a show like My Hero Academia gone onto Netflix, it would have been just dropped on the platform with any other number of titles, and it would have probably died as a brand. It would have been just another brand on the platform. This is exactly what happened to Evangelion. Fukunaga posits that if Funimation had the Evangelion license, it would have been an event, bringing the show to new heights in popularity. Physical releases, merchandise, movie events, and more, all lost alongside potential popularity with a Netflix release. Netflix and their exclusive streaming deals stand in stark contrast to the traditional distribution methods such as DVDs, which generally have agreements to divvy up the revenue between two companies, and also help broaden the show's audience from just a single platform's narrow user base. Let's put every issue this causes together like this. After God knows how many viewers on Netflix, Bones hasn't seen a single penny from Netflix for Carol and Tuesday beyond the initial agreement. Bones also has no idea if their show is a success overseas, since Netflix doesn't share their numbers with most partners. In addition, Carol and Tuesday hasn't seen any merchandise, meaning there's even less revenue for the original creators. The lack of merchandise and platform exclusivity also make the odds incredibly stacked against the show becoming a success. Nice. Back in 2013, Studio Trigger blessed us with Little Witch Academia. and 2 years later with a follow-up film titled The Enchanted Parade. The unique and well-crafted movies were an immediate hit with anime fans around the world, and Little Witch Academia is one of the defining franchises for Studio Trigger. Now, Netflix naturally wanted to branch into anime streaming, and LWA was a perfect slice of that pie. They decided to license both movies. So, what did they do? Well, they delayed the release of an already complete product to create an English dub for the show, and some 5 months later we had Little Witch Academia and the follow-up film available for streaming. However, that was 2015, and it's 2020 now. If you go onto Netflix these days, the films are long gone, and no longer available to be streamed. They left Netflix around mid-2019, and are now no longer available anywhere. Seriously, Netflix never released an official Blu-ray for American audiences, meaning there's currently no way to watch these incredible films. So pirate away. But wait, what about the English dub? I mean, I don't care about it, but I'm sure some people do, right? Well, thanks to Netflix, the original dub is now pretty much lost media. Since it was never released outside of streaming for consumers, all that remains are essentially recordings of people's Netflix streams. The English dub is lost in its original unstreamed, uncompressed format. Thanks, Netflix.
Wow, they have it! Shit.
When you watch anime on Netflix, your monthly subscription goes towards high-quality shows, such as 13 Reasons Why, a show that has been repeatedly criticized for its romanticization of suicide and potential dangerous influence on young people. Big Mouth, an animation that shows obscene content with children as young as 11. Cuties. Of course, on top of Netflix's high-quality content, they produce anime too, like Castlevania. I mean, it's in the anime section of Netflix, and they sure do think it's an anime. Never mind the fact that it was written by British people and made by Frederator, a fucking American company. Keep up the great anime, Netflix. Sarcasm and generalizations aside, Netflix does create some anime. Thank God the world was blessed with masterpieces like Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex 2045. Keep up the great work. Not every Netflix show is a hit, and it would be ignorant of me to assume it's only possible for a company to produce hits. It's equally ridiculous of me to encourage others to support only companies that exclusively create masterpieces, because those companies don't exist. But I want you, the viewer, to understand where your money goes when you buy a subscription to Netflix. It goes towards funding shows like Big Mouth, 13 Reasons Why, and poorly made anime like SAC 2045. It also goes towards buying the rights towards something like Cuties.
Pedo.
Pedo is in the base.
I initially hesitated on including this section of the video, as this story is still developing during the time of writing. But this whole situation has led to a lot of people unsubscribing from Netflix, which is the goal of this video anyways, so I figured including it would only be a net positive. Your subscription money goes towards shows and movies like Cuties.
Well, look at the city slicker pulling up in his fancy German car.
This car was made in Guatemala.
Exclusives are commonplace in streaming these days, and Netflix is the king of them. From LWA to BNA to Pokemon Journeys, Netflix has continued to pursue exclusives as an anti-consumer way to entice customers to join their streaming service. Let's say you want to watch an anime like BNA. You have absolutely no choice but to watch BNA on Netflix. You cannot purchase the anime secondhand, you can't stream it elsewhere, it is only on Netflix. The consumer is forced into buying into a platform they may potentially have no interest in, as opposed to a product being widely available. On top of it being anti-consumer, making something exclusive limits the general audience, revenue streams for the original creators, and more. To play devil's advocate here, you could argue that exclusives keep the industry competitive. I would be inclined to agree with this argument if every single exclusive is funded for and by the platform, but that's simply not the case. Purchasing exclusivity rights for something already made like Evangelion does nothing but harm the consumer, forcing them into buying a service they're not interested in aside from the show. We're going to see an industry where every single streaming platform is never releasing shows physically, has countless exclusives, and users are forced into spending copious amounts of money on subscriptions every month in order to watch everything they want to watch. Or you could pirate. But even then, with these companies not releasing physical products, it means that we're seeing releases such as English dubs only available on streaming platforms with absolutely no alternatives available. Netflix's constantly changing library makes it difficult for the average consumer to keep up with their releases. One day you could be almost done with an anime, only for it to be gone the next. This is such an issue that entire websites are dedicated to cataloging whenever Netflix's licenses run out, so viewers can stay in the know. There hasn't been much outcry with this regarding anime, but look at how bad the backlash was when Netflix announced it couldn't keep The Office anymore. This could happen at any time for any show you want to watch. Just disappear. Just like it did for Little Witch. Gone. And potentially with nowhere else to watch it and no ways to purchase it physically. The last section of this video will be more broadly on why you should not support streaming services in general. This includes Netflix, but the general arguments apply to just about every single streaming service out there. If there's one section of the video I don't expect everyone to agree on, it's probably this. That being said, I hope you learn a thing or two about how streaming services operate and your rights as a consumer. Netflix, much like every other streaming service, is inherently anti-consumer. I know that's quite an inflammatory statement, but allow me to explain. I'm going to be borrowing quite a bit of this argument from Richard Stallman. If you haven't heard of this guy, he's a software developer behind GNU and is an outspoken supporter of freedom on the internet, free software, and more. Netflix, like many other streaming platforms, restricts the user with digital rights management, abbreviated as DRM. When you use Netflix, you are signing away rights you would traditionally have when consuming media. There's a reason why every single time video games have restrictive DRM, there's an outrage. So where is it with digital anime and media? Video game fans were furious when they were restricted from reselling or lending their physically purchased games from Xbox One when it was launched. They lament when digital-only games disappear, such as PT, making them impossible to preserve. Yet there's almost no outcry when streaming services use the same anti-consumer practices for streaming service media. This here is my copy of Cowboy Bebop. I purchased it a few years back during a sale and it served me well. This is a stream of Cowboy Bebop from Netflix. Both are pretty much the same at first glance, except the Blu-ray has naturally higher quality. But what's truly important is what you're not seeing. This is my copy of Cowboy Bebop, and under United States copyright law, I'm able to give or lend this to anyone, or even resell it online or to a secondhand store. All of these are forbidden under streaming services or outright impossible. Hell, with this copy of Cowboy Bebop, I could even do things that are forbidden. I could take this disc and burn it, making a copy for a friend. I could take the files on this disc and upload them online, in spite of the illegality. All of these are expressly forbidden by streaming platforms like Netflix, or not possible, because you're streaming the file. You will never have access to the original RAWs, which creates a massive problem for media preservation and consumer rights. You're unable to make copies of the file for your own use, resell them, or more. United States copyright law may sound like it exists solely to protect companies, but the laws also exist to protect the rights of consumers. By using platforms like Netflix, you are willingly signing away rights you are generally given when consuming media. In a traditional exchange, the customer pays money and in turn receives a file. Whether on a disc or digitally, that file is the consumer's. Netflix and other streaming platforms are the complete antithesis of this exchange. Their modus operandi is to keep the original file as far away from the consumer as possible, and to squeeze as many consumer rights away from them as possible. Let's give a brief example here. My friend Kay supported Google Play for 4 years, ultimately spending around $430 to support their streaming service for music. In August of 2020, Google Play announced they would be shutting down, turning customers to their alternative YouTube Music. So my friend was forcibly turned to a platform he found inferior with a poor mobile app, numerous glitches, and more. $430 over 4 years, and what did he have to show for it when the service was all said and done? Absolutely nothing. He didn't have one album, one song downloaded even. Nothing. All because this is the streaming endgame. To keep everything as far away from the consumer as possible. Did Google Play do anything wrong? No. Google got the sucker to sign his rights away and accept not owning any of the music he was streaming. Did Kay do anything wrong? Yes, streaming in the first place. Now, I understand that there's a give and take regarding this sort of thing. The ability to use Netflix or any streaming platform for that matter on your tablet, television, desktop computer, phone, just about anything is truly convenient. Alongside the convenience of streaming, many platforms also have robust libraries of media for consumption. In exchange for these things, many people are willing to give up their rights and freedoms granted under copyright law. That being said, don't you think you give a little too many of your rights in order to take a Netflix stream? I think a lot of this boils down to Netflix being incredibly transparent and them essentially using anime only for profit. If you're okay with getting an inferior product of BDs and downloads via streams, Whatever. I hope I've made you aware of the rights as a consumer you're giving up doing that, and what kinds of practices you support through a Netflix stream. That being said, other websites and companies at least give some semblance of caring, but Netflix obviously doesn't give a damn about what the anime community is in the slightest. They're a company of sleazeballs using anime for the sole purpose of getting more money, rather than an interest in the medium like companies such as Crunchyroll have.